Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. Tonight I've got some terrifying Dogman encounters to share with you. Before we get into these encounters, a couple of links I'd like to share as well. As you know, I'm commercial free, and I use PayPal and Patreon and my merch link to help this channel grow and go. Those links are in the description. Also, my second channel, it's a channel dedicated to creepypasta, fan fiction, and scary voice acting. If that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may like them as well. And with that, guys, let's get on with the encounters, shall we? Our first encounter of the evening. One night a few years ago, me and my two sisters were right outside our house underneath this tree, and we started hearing the strangest noise I've ever heard in my life coming from the tree above us. We immediately ran for the porch. I wish I would have just looked up, but you have to understand how terrified it made us. After a minute or two of me looking out into the night and saying, "What was that?" I decided I wanted to go back out there and look, but I didn't see or hear anything. It's been a few years, and it's kind of been difficult to remember exactly what it sounded like, but it was like a demonic baby crying. The reason why I think it was a Dogman is I've heard and read that it's supposed to have a pretty weird growl voice, whatever you want to call it. I'm wondering what you guys think. If you know anything about something like that, please leave a comment below. Our second encounter of the evening. For starters, I'm a 17-year-old girl from Colorado. I'm white and I don't have a lick of Native American blood in me, but I don't think that really matters for this. My dad's side of the family have all farms in Minnesota built on land that was heavily populated by Native Americans well over a century ago. We know this because we found boxes on top of boxes of Native American artifacts, including tons of arrow and spearheads, ceremonial jewelry, pottery shards, tapping stones, and more. Every year during spring planting, the tractors bring up more. We have experienced paranormal happenings on our land, but I'm only there so often, so I've only experienced a very small handful of things that I couldn't explain away. For the most part, while I am a Christian and believer of the paranormal and supernatural, I like to find logical explanations to things. I'm very often curious, and it takes a lot to scare me. I've been through enough shit already to have most of my fear gone, but this year especially has been testing me on all levels. I had to fly back to Minnesota, which is where I really call home, the Wednesday after Memorial Day because my grandpa passed away on Memorial Day morning. His death honestly shocked us all. He was stubborn and strong, and despite his disabilities and illnesses, he always pulled through when he got sick and was determined to return to the farm. But I guess he just couldn't take it anymore and passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by his wife and kids. He wanted all of his grandkids, including myself, to be at his funeral, so I flew in as soon as possible, leaving my life responsibilities in Colorado. My mom was nice enough to come in with me, even though my parents divorced when I was a toddler. She just stayed at the hotel and out of our way for the most part, even though we invited her to Grandpa's wake and funeral. My mom wanted me to connect with my Minnesota family more than ever. So the night of the day I flew in, my aunt offered to take me to my Uncle A's place for something to do. My Uncle A just lives a quarter mile up the road from Grandma's farm, or across the field from it. Grandma's farm is visible from Uncle A's house, and I could easily walk to and fro the houses. When I got there, my uncle almost immediately gave me a .22 caliber rifle and a Mountain Dew soda, and complained to me about his growing blackbird problem. He said he'd give me a buck of bird, so I agreed to go out there and shoot. By then it was getting too dark and the sights on the rifle were off, so I didn't get anything at all except for leaves and sky. If the sights on the rifle were good, I would have made $5 that night at least. My uncle found his other .22 rifle with good sights, but by then it was too dark to differentiate the blackbirds from the robins, and it's illegal to shoot robins in the state of Minnesota. So to pass time, my uncle set up a pyramid of old soda and beer cans for us to shoot at. My little cousins came out with their bows and BB guns, so my uncle and I would take turns showing the boys how to shoot their weapons and fired our .22s as well. We were having a very good time, and I almost forgotten the main reason why I was in Minnesota in the first place. My cousins had gone down to the basement walkout where my aunt and my uncle's wife were sitting. Meanwhile, my uncle and I continued to shoot the .22s when my uncle suddenly commanded me to stop shooting. He was tracking something with his finger. "What the fuck is that?" my uncle shouted. What is that?" I asked, alarmed. I squinted to see my uncle was tracking, and then I saw it. From our standpoint, we could see across the fields over rolling hills. If you looked to the left, you could see my grandma's, and if you looked to the right, you could see several more farms dotting the fields. If you looked straight ahead, you'd see the side of a large hill with a field on it, and just ahead of the hill was a small grove of trees that also lined our property. The creature my uncle was pointing at was running parallel to the horizon, and would eventually run across that hillside, which was no more than a quarter mile away from us. It was hauling ass, running as fast or faster than a racehorse. The creature was solid black, very large and slender, with a small head, extremely long and thin legs, and no visible tail. At first, we thought it was a deer, and we decided that it was too slender and too black to be a deer. Then I suggested it was a Great Dane, or perhaps a horse. But no one in the area had a black Great Dane, or any big black dog for that matter. Nor does anyone have a black horse, and the way this creature was running, it didn't look like either of those. It was about the size of a horse, but it ran a bit like a deer, with a spring to its step. It had a hunched back, and the legs were very long and very skinny like twigs. Its head was small. It looked like a greyhound, but much, much larger. And it looked a bit distorted and twisted also. I don't really know how to explain it. It just knew it was fucked up looking. I could tell the front of it was larger than its back, like its rib cage jutted out a bit, and while its front legs were almost like long human arms, and its back legs were like a deer, only a bit more meaty than that. And its hip bones seemed to jut out a bit like hips on a Holstein cow. It was galloping and gaining speed like it was on a hunt, but the thin line of trees separating our property from our neighbors. This line was 2 trees thick at most, and the trees were oak trees no older than 20 years. We should have been able to see the thing stop, especially since there was no more than 300 feet away when it ran into the trees. But we didn't see nor hear anything. Plus, even when it came close, other than its size, there was nothing very clear about it. It was just slender, long-legged, puny-headed, and didn't have a visible tail. My uncle's wife suddenly called our attention, asking what the hell we were seeing, and said we're scaring our little cousins. My uncle described it just as I did, and I confirmed because she thought we were just bullshitting. My uncle and I stayed in our places, our rifles loaded and ready, and stared at those trees for a good 10 minutes, occasionally glancing at each other, and saw nothing exit nor heard anything move. It was a windless, quiet night, so we could hear almost everything, including the cows nearly a mile away. Needless to say, we were both pretty freaked out, and I spent some time on my phone that night, looking up various things to see if I could come up with a rational explanation for what we saw. I found nothing except for Skinwalker stories and descriptions which fit the creature we saw perfectly. I've heard of Skinwalkers before in many stories, but never really believed they existed. Even if they did, I thought they were only in the southwestern states, but I guess they can appear anywhere. So, what do you guys think? I'm open to possible explanations, similar experiences, and other ideas. I don't usually share my stories, but this happened Wednesday night, and I'll definitely stick with me. Extra info for this story. I don't know if this matters, but my family and I have been having some pretty bad luck lately, before and after the sighting. If losing my grandpa wasn't enough, my oldest uncle, Uncle B, nearly lost his life in a tractor accident. He's okay, just a broken foot and 20 stitches in his head. I've struggled with my health severely this past year. I have cystic fibrosis and am one of the healthiest CFers in the world, but even I had to drop out of school to get better. I'm wondering if perhaps I'm cursed for some reason. The bad luck refuses to leave me alone. In just the last few days, I'm visiting my other grandpa's childhood farm in North Dakota. I've lost my phone to the river while fishing, caught no fish despite there being schools of them everywhere, and we had a storm come through a couple nights ago that was the worst storm to hit in over 80 years. Even in Colorado, our weather has been worse than usual, and my mental health definitely took a dive when my grandpa died. I applied for many different hunting tags in the many different states, and I didn't get any tags at all. I'm not one to complain, but the Skinwalker sightings seem to escalate my bad luck. Maybe it's just been a rough year and I'm overthinking things, but maybe I'm not. Our third encounter of the evening. I live in northern Wisconsin, and it was winter. I was helping my friend shovel snow, and as the night grew darker, we heard strange howling and screams, so we ignored it and kept working. As the night progressed, I looked over and saw a black figure walk out of the forest and run back in. I told my friend we need to get back into the house, and now. So we ran in and locked all the doors. Then I heard scratching on the wall. I looked out of the window to see a wolf head on a man's body. It looked directly at me with yellowish red eyes. I screamed and ran into the bedroom. The next day I went outside and saw "Hello" scratched on the outside wall of the house. The beast was at least 7 feet tall, possibly 600 pounds, with very muscular and slim at the waist. I couldn't sleep at night for months, and I will never go out into the woods at night again. Wow, guys, 3 great stories. 3 amazing cryptid encounters. 2 that we know were definitely Dogman. The second story, I don't know, it has a very similar feeling to a Dogman. We're talking Minnesota, Dogman country. Not Skinwalker country, but who knows? I want to hear what you guys think. Story 2, tell me what you guys, please, think on this one. I think Dogman. They think Skinwalker. They really don't know, actually. They're just scared. Please let me know what you guys think, and with that, I've got a lot more stories tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.